So next up we have Chaitanya, and he is a business intelligence analyst who has worked on multiple BI technologies. So for example, SAP BI, Tableau, or Power BI. So he has a breadth of experience across different tools. And he actually started recently in Tableau and became quickly really passionate about it. And he's here to talk about his first Tableau project and what things. Hi, Chaitanya.
Hi, hello.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, I would say it's over to you.
Sure. Let me share my screen. So, the topic that I wanted to share with the community was my first experience into Tableau project. So, what are the challenges that I faced? Basically, how I got introduced to Tableau. Everything, the challenges, how I have to overcome, what are the skill sets that I have to add to my arsenal, and many more. Something exciting to share from my experience of my first project. All right. So let me begin by introducing myself. So I'm a BI engineer who started the career into BI itself. Got opportunity to work on to multiple technologies like SAP Business Intelligence, Tableau, and some experience onto Power BI as well. So I have some diverse interests into information technologies. I keep on sharing some kinds of tweets on my Twitter handle of these topics: sports, economics, art, music, history. So I have keep these interests into multiple technologies. Also these interests as well. Okay, so how do I got introduced to Tableau? So basically, one of the interviewed, I was asked to create some sample dashboards into Tableau. I wasn't aware until that what was exactly about Tableau, but since I was working on BI itself, so they had asked me to use another technology, Tableau, to create some dashboards for them, and that way I got introduced to Tableau, and later on started introduced to the community by participating into the very well-known Makeover Monday sports activities and the other ones that are carried out in the community as well for the Tableau users, which eventually I got a job to work on Tableau on daily basis, and I've been using Tableau since then. Okay. So whenever you start working onto Tableau, let's say someone gives you a project or you start building some dashboards, the first thing that you will always go on is to understand the business requirements, right? So maybe end users or the stakeholders would come up to you. They want some kinds of dashboards to build in, right? So they would share some kinds of requirements with you, what exactly they're trying to visualize, who are their end audience, what kinds of dimensions, measures they want, what kind of filters they want the end users to use in. Such kinds of discussions you would discuss in your first call with the stakeholders to understand what exactly their dashboard would look like in the end, or at least a picture that you would gather upon. So what practice that I follow is like maybe set up a regular calls with the stakeholders just to understand what else things they would like to incorporate in the dashboards going further, so that you also get a constant feedbacks from the stakeholder, which I feel is very critical in creating these dashboards, so that they might come up with some new ideas which might be best suitable for the dashboards, and thereupon you could be creating some more user-friendly dashboards as well, which would be beneficial for taking the business decisions more accurately or more beneficially. So this is what kind of first things I generally follow in the first kind of calls before actually visualizing the dashboards into Tableau. So after gathering the requirements from the stakeholders, you got everything, pictures, what you want into Tableau. The big chunk that comes to you is understanding the data. it's very critical. I believe most of you would be agreeing with me that to understand your data is quite important in creating such dashboards. So what are the basically you might start with what are the data source details. You might not aware of where the data is stored, so you will have to first gather those informations, how the data is stored, then whether the data is coming from a single table, or you would require some kinds of joins to be written SQL queries, so that you're pulling the data as per the requirements. So understanding of SQL query writing becomes a quite important if your data happens to be stored in data sources, not even flat files like Excel or CSVs. So big thing to understand the SQL query writing would be one of the major steps that you would do along with learning with the Tableau functionalities as well. Then understanding how the granularity of your data is, if in case you require, let's say if a table is there and you're trying to just pulling the data per the dimensions and measures that have been required to create a dashboard. So you must also have an awareness about the granularity of your data. It might be the case sometimes the data that you're showing in the dashboard might be inflated, just in case you are not aware of the data, how it's been stored or how you're bringing into dashboards. So that becomes a very key point to remember while creating some dashboards. Uh, yeah, most of the users also might have faced these data preparations. You might use some other tools like Tableau Prep or some other ones. Your data might be scattered, or it might not be as good directly used into Tableau dashboards. You might have to cleanse your data, prepare your data, and then bring it to dashboards and to Tableau. So that also becomes a very critical points while creating those reports into Tableau as well. So once you have finalized your data, you brought in the data into Tableau, prepared it, then I think creating a sample data for data validations, because whatever you visualize in Tableau, it's not about just creating some custom charts or just for visualization sakes. It has to have some kind of meaningful data into it. And for by meaningful, I mean it needs to be quite accurate, so the business can take some decisions based on that. So making sure the data is correct, I think using an extract or a subset of the data for validation purpose becomes a very important step as well. Maybe you could use small data in some other tools, maybe like Excel conventional. If you're quite comfortable using Excel as well, then bring into it at just confirm with the stakeholder, this is what my data looks like after doing those steps, initial steps. Just confirm with them. If they are good, maybe then you are ready to go into Tableau and start visualizing the data. If it is not, maybe you'll have to go back again, think about the data, make some kind of changes to the logics or anything, depending upon how implemented the data might be. But this is quite a very important step, I believe, prior to visualizing in Tableau, making sure the data is quite accurate as per the business requirements they have. Then comes the major challenges into Tableau. So my project was completely upon visualizing the KPIs for various, let's say for workstations or like for branches, where we're trying to measure the KPIs for the branches, for the employees. So that was the hierarchy for the dashboards, where I had to show those KPIs at different level of hierarchy. So the important challenge that I faced was I had these calculations created in Tableau, where I had used fixed LOD, and the wanted to share was how did I got to learn the fixed LOD. So I created a calculation at the day level, completely a day level, which went very well. But there was the another visualization that was at different granularity. It was at the hourly level. So I was using the similar calculation at that visualizations as well, and that caused an issue for me. I did not incorporate the the calculation was not fixed at that level of uh, date basically. So that I had to learn the fixed LOD calculation for that purpose to make sure the I'm calculating at that level of details for that purpose. So understanding the LODs also was quite an experience in that process, because fixed LODs just fixes the details at that particular uh, dimensions that you have included in the calculations. So had to give and try at that after understanding what was going wrong in that calculation. So that was an experience of learning LD calculations in the process as well. Then come the part of creating some uh, visualizations. So I was trying to build in the trend basically by day. So there were my how many activities were happening in a particular day as compared to the previous days, like that. So I had to create a bar chart where I was showing my trend lines basically. However, just to make that effectively more analytical way, I had to use some features into Tableau which are built in, like reference lines, excluding of the zeros, so that it could easily tell me how varying my activities are on daily basis, so I can understand on previous day and for today how many fluctuations were there. So such kinds of features which we have into Tableau built in, have to use it, and so that I can represent my data in a more effective way and more insightful way. So that was one of the one of the experience that have come in. It's not about just creating visualizations. You should have some meaningful insights coming out of it as well. Then since my data was quite a huge into volume, had to consider about my refresh as well. I was using an extract connection. I mean, the extract was taking quite a while to refresh on the server, so I had to think about my incremental refresh of my Tableau extract. So that's one of the features might be newcomer might not be aware of, and might ignore on that factor as well. So you might wanted to mention into it as well that we have this feature and you could also use of it. Now, if in case you have a huge volume of data and if it is taking quite a long time to refresh the extract. Then the big part, as most of the users, newcomers might face, is creating a Tableau calculations. It's kind of a painful if we are not completely aware of the functionalities, what the functions do. So that's a quite learning experience, and I think eventually more and more we practice, I think you could definitely get in more insights into it and creating calculations. So the challenges that I faced was like I had to create the color coding based upon some kinds of threshold. So I had to understand how I have to create such kinds of calculations which would make my color coding scheme go with my threshold. So that was one of the uh, major part that I have to come over as well. Getting comfortable with the creating Tableau calculations as well. Then one thing that I was using was the start and end date as filters in my dashboards, and I was using parameters for these filtering the date range. However, one thing all the users might have faced using the parameters as a date. filter is whenever you publish for that particular date on the server, it remains constant, right? So let's say if I publish a dashboard on 25th of October, and if someone is viewing on maybe on 25th of December, the dashboard, the selected date and start date would still remain 25th of October. Let's say if someone has to update it automatically, then what? Yeah. So the workaround or the option that I had gone with was using this extension date updater, which would automatically update my date range in the parameters based upon the selected date range. So you have from 2 days till last 7 days, or last 30 days, last 90 days. So it would automatically update your parameters date range selected as well. So that's some kinds of a handy uh, uh, tricks or some uh, techniques that you would follow if in case you're using parameters as a date selected in your dashboards. Uh, then how do I got the help? So someone coming new to the any kinds of technologies might not always get all those insights, how the functionalities work in case some business requirements comes up and you're not completely getting how to handle it or tackle it. So you would always look for some kinds of helps. So even happened with me. I was looking kinds of help, and over this process, I got to introduce some kinds of forums, channels, which I followed on. Majorly, it was like taking some courses, online courses, to understand the functionalities of Tableau, as well as to get some higher level of expertise onto the software as well, so that I could add some of more advanced skills into my arsenal. So that's pretty much a very helpful courses that I've came across to add some of those techniques as well. Tableau community is definitely a worth something to use on daily basis. Not only just you could post some kinds of questions, you could always follow the other users. There are quite a lot of users who frequently use and answers the others, the threads that have been posted on the community. So it's a quite similar post you might come across, which you are also looking for some help, and that's definitely a learning quite a universe. I would say that's a universe of learning the Tableau skills for anyone who is coming new, or maybe for that instance, if you're an experienced campaigner in Tableau as well. So that's a very recommended, I would say, using on daily basis Tableau community forums. Then always there is a community who's been always helping hand for me over this process of learning these Tableau features, and along with this, always ask for the community. There are lots of many guys who would definitely respond you back with their insights or their approach of dealing with that. Maybe you might not come across just like with other forums. So it's always good to ask with the community as well how they would have tackled such kinds of scenarios, and you might get some meaningful insights as well onto it. Then just to wind up, you could follow me on the Twitter handle. But like I said, I have quite a diverse interest on those topics, along with Tableau or IT or some other, for that instance, technologies I've mentioned. That's my public profile on Tableau that I've created. So that you could just give me a follow-up. And yeah, that's all from me. I'm open for any kinds of questions and answers.
Hey, thanks for that. I think that was great, and a great reminder that sort of you can get a certain level of skill, and you can actually create something reasonably quickly if you sort of get involved with these sort of challenges and like try to upskill yourself. And you don't necessarily need to work for, I don't know, 5 years with a tool to create something or to be good at something. So I think that's a great reminder, and thanks for sharing that. What, like, how did that work internally? Like, did you have sort of a support structure when you worked on these projects, that you could go to your colleagues or somebody to help you, or were you more sort of on your own and you had to figure it out on your own?
So yeah, so the major chunk that I always felt challenging was bringing in the correct data. So the challenges in my project was the data was quite scattered. So I had to bring the data from various tables and from various data sources. So that was the major challenges that I faced. So I had to always collaborate with the data source team to bringing the data to understand how the data has been structured, basically, and gathering those data source is quite an important thing I always felt. And collaborating with the teams at your workplace becomes quite important, I think, to make sure we have the accurate data in as well, and to Tableau then.
Then I would say thank you for your presentation. Thanks for being a part of our Tableau Fringe Festival today.